Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the May 16, 2013 council meeting, and Mr. Shane McFarland, Councilman Shane McFarland, you have the prayer and the pledge.
All right, if you'll bow your heads. Father, what a great opportunity to be here tonight. And Lord, instead of getting up and saying we want these things, I just want to say I've seen you do some mighty things over the last 2 weeks. Seen 10,000 men gather in Murphy Center to get to try to know you more. Lord, just today saw a man that was not supposed to live that now is speaking and sitting up and carrying on a conversation. So I just want to praise you for the things that you're doing in our community and really through the people in our community. And not to be naive enough to think that the blessings that you've given us in Murfreesboro are because of something that we've done. It's the grace that you've given us. And when we look at our community and we see others, communities that are struggling through the economy or whether it be crime or different things like that, I also don't want to be naive enough to think that we're the ones who are causing our community to flourish. It's through you, and just want to ask that, Lord, to help us be a conduit to keep that momentum going. We thank you and we praise you. Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, council members and audience, you have your consent agenda. There's one little slip up here. Item C, location A is 2946 South Church Street instead of 2949.
Mr. Mayor, I move for adoption of the consent agenda.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly?
Aye.
Mr. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington?
Aye. Now we will consider the minutes for the May 9, 2013 regular meeting. Council members.
Move for approval.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly?
Aye.
Mr. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington?
Aye. Now we have our third readings. Consider for passage on third and final reading ordinance 13-08-06 to annex an area adopted along South Church Street and Linford Drive at Joby Jackson Parkway and to adopt the same plan of services.
Move for passage.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly?
Aye.
Mr. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington?
Aye. Consider for passage on third and final reading ordinance 13-OZ-07 to zone an area located along South Church Street and Linford Drive at Joby Jackson Parkway as highway commercial CH district simultaneous with the annexation.
Move for approval.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly?
No.
Mr. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington?
Aye. Item 6, consider for passage on third and final reading ordinance 13-OZ-09 to rezone an area located along Memorial Boulevard to the highway commercial CH district.
We skip.
I did skip one.
I think it's number 5. That's
I did. Let's go back to number 5. Consider for passage on third and final reading ordinance 13-OZ-08 to rezone an area located along Iron Gate Boulevard to the highway commercial CH district.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly?
Aye.
Mr. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington?
All right. Now, item 6, consider for passage on third and final reading ordinance 13-OZ-09 to rezone an area located along Memorial Boulevard, the highway commercial CH district.
Move for passage.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly?
Aye.
Mr. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington?
Aye. Item 7, consider for passage on third and final reading ordinance 13-OZ-10 to amend the planned unit development PUD district located along Rucker Lane.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly?
Aye.
Mr. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington?
Aye. Item 8, consider for passage on third and final reading ordinance 13-OZ-11 to rezone an area located along Robert Rose Drive to residential multifamily 16 RM 16 district.
Move for passage.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gelli.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye. Item 10, consider for passage on third and final reading ordinance 13-OZ-13 to rezone an area located along Deal Lane.
He's skipping.
I did? Oh, man, I'm skipping all over the place. Item 9, consider for passage on third and final reading ordinance 13-OZ-12 to rezone an area located along Hazelwood Street to residential multifamily 16 RM16 district.
Move for approval.
Tell you what happens when I get in a hurry.
Second.
Call roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gelli.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye. Item 10, consider for passage on third and final reading ordinance 13-OZ-13 to rezone an area located along Deal Lane to residential multifamily 16 RM district.
So moved.
And second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gelli.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye. Item 11. Make sure I'm doing this right. Consider for passage on third and final reading ordinance 13-0-14, amending Chapter 21, offenses and miscellaneous provisions, and adding Article 2, special events.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gelli.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye. First reading is 12. Hear from Water and Sewer Director with regards to ordinance 13-0-25. Mr. Gore.
Vice Mayor Washington, Council, thank you for the opportunity to come before you tonight. I'm going to be quick, but I thought it was a good opportunity for me to introduce you to our rate analysis and metrics that we've been dealing with starting since 2008. What we're trying to accomplish at the Water and Sewer Department is to hit the sweet spot with regards to rates. This came to me after a meeting I had yesterday, and I wanted to bring it up. But there's a cost of service associated with delivering potable water and treating sanitary sewer. There's some affordability indexes that we have to compare ourselves against. And then there's some market conditions with our neighbors and adjoining utilities that we also want to take into perspective as we move forward with rate design. I'm going to go through each three of these real quickly, a couple slides apiece. But on cost of service, for the water, you can see the dashed line is we conduct a cost of service analysis that's done by Jackson Thornton. It's an accounting firm out of Montgomery, Alabama that specializes in cost of service associated with not only water and sewer utilities, but electric utilities and gas utilities. But if we had our ideal situation to cover our cost to take in, to treat 1 gallon of water up to the 12,000, that would follow the dashed line. Where our current rate design is the solid line. You can see those don't intersect. They would intersect around 17,100 gallons of water sold per month. That basically means that at 17,100, we recoup our actual cost to provide that service. Sewer's a little bit different. You can see that those intersect at around 5,667 gallons. This is the proposed rate design that the ordinance contains tonight. The dashed line is the cost of service that's looking at pro forma fiscal year 15. So again, in an ideal environment, our solid line would be aligning with the dashed line. When you look at the two combined, water and sewer on a monthly cost, roughly 7,570 gallons needs to be sold, water and sewer, before we actually recover that cost of service. So that's something we look at. That's one element. That's one of the three elements that we do take into account when we determine our rate design. The other is the affordability index. And basically what those I've left the cost of service and our proposed rate design on there. The metric that American Water Works Association recommends is that the cost for water and sewer should not exceed a person's 4% of an annual income. We get the very low income numbers from John Callow, and he gets those from the HUD Section 8 income limits. So what we've done here is we've charted out on those purple dots basically what one person of a very low income, the 4%, equated to a monthly cost. So you can see that's above our cost of service and the proposed rate design. And we can kind of climb the ladder here. 2-person, 3-person family, 4-person, and then a 5-person. And you can see we basically at 5 persons we get to that point where our proposed rate design just exceeds the affordability index. I think it's 4.2%. That if at that income level at a $34,500 with 5 people using water, we would just exceed that 4% of that income. So the good thing to note here, though, is the dashed line, which is the cost of service line. If we ever do get that aligned, it would meet all of those affordability indexes, and that's where we're moving as we go forward. We're trying to align with that cost of service. The last one, we're looking at market conditions. Been keeping track of our neighboring. I know this is a little bit busy slide, but these are the different communities surrounding Murfreesboro. MWSD is the blue with the circles. Then you can see Laverne, Smyrna, CUD, Franklin. There's the Tennessee average of utilities that submit to Allen and Hochul. It's a survey that's undertaken, and then there's a national Group C, which Murfreesboro qualifies as a Class C sized utility. We go in and we get that national assessment as well. The dashed lines kind of show where proposed rates are moving for all of those utilities. The solid lines are actual. This is based on 5,000 gallons a month, which is pretty typical for a family of 3. So we're right in the middle of the pack there, and I do know that some of these utilities are going to be having some pretty large rate increases over the next several years. I think we are, quite honestly, with the ordinance you have before you tonight, we are about at the tail end of what I would consider, we've been reducing our minimum allowance down to 0. We're accomplishing that through this ordinance before you tonight. So I'm expecting nominal increases, if any, over the next few years with the rate design. So that's our recommendation tonight, is to maintain or keep our minimum monthly charges for all meters sizes, reduce the minimum monthly allowance for a 5/8 inch meter, which is a residential size meter, reduce that from its current 50 cubic feet per month down to a 0 minimum allowance. And also on the other size meters, we're recommending a 20% reduction in the monthly allowance. So the rate stays the same, the commodity rate stays the same, we're just slowly taking away that minimum allowance. So I'm available for questions.
Okay, Councilman, any questions of Mr. Gold before we move forward? All right, thank you, Darren.
Thank you.
All right, item B on the first readings, consider for passage on first reading ordinance 13-0-25, amending Chapter 33, Water and Sewers, Section 33.1 of the Murfreesboro City Code, dealing with the minimum monthly water charges and minimum monthly sewer charges. First reading.
I will say that I certainly appreciate all the work that Darren's put into this, and the being proactive certainly will pay dividends in the future and down the road, and I think you've got us going in the right direction. I certainly appreciate that, Darren. Having said that, I move for passage on first reading.
I'll second, making note that was a great PowerPoint presentation.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye. New business, item 13, consider request of the city recorder with regards to renewals of certificate of compliance. A, Andy Patel at Meadow Liquor, 4205B Manson Pike. B, Rubina Jaffer of Borough Liquors, 3210 B Memorial Boulevard, and Bernard Gogan Ravel, Matish B. Patel, Dushyant S. Patel, and Mukesh B. Patel at Old Fort Liquor and Wine, 144 Casey Lane, Suite B.
This is a 2-year requirement by the state of Tennessee to show that, per our background check and our requirements, that they've done what they need to do for us to approve them to continue. And so these are all renewals. I recommend approval.
Ms. McGann, do we need separate motions, or can they be approved together?
I think you can do these together.
Ms. Wright, do they all meet our minimum standards?
They do.
Okay. Move for approval.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye. Item 14, pursuant to Resolution 13-OZ-R-15 adopted by the City Council on April 18, 2013, conduct a public hearing to consider rezoning approximately 9.62 acres located along Memorial Boulevard from single-family residential 15, RS 15 district, 6.86 acres in duplex residential RD district, 2.76 acres to highway commercial, CH district. Don Irwin and Diane Harper applicants. Notice of the said public hearing was published in the April 28, 2013 issue of the local newspaper. Hello, Ms. Ely.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Washington. Good evening. Our first public hearing brought to you this evening by the Planning Commission is to consider rezoning properties located along the eastern side of Memorial Boulevard. Those properties are identified as blue on the map that's before you. These properties are a total of 9.62 acres. 4 of the lots are currently zoned RD, which is for residential duplex, and 9 of the lots are zoned RS15, which is single-family residential district. The request is to change the zone of all of these lots from RD to RS15, from RD and from RS15 to CH, Commercial Highway District. This property is located just south of the city's fire station, which is a part of the property that is owned by the city. It's also located north of the area where a proposed Walmart site plan has been reviewed and approved. So this is located, this is a strip of residential property located between the Walmart and the city facilities to the north. The properties across the street are zoned CH, the Kroger, the post office, and Bojangles, and also zoned RS15. You can note on the map that there's an area that says area in process of being rezoned to CH. That's an area which has been, those are areas which have been considered for the zone to be changed from RS15 to CH. So although they are RS15 today, when the ordinance becomes effective, they'll be zoned CH as well. Property to the south, as I mentioned, is where the approved Walmart site plan is, and that property is zoned CH. And the property that's directly contiguous with this is zoned P, and that's the city's airport and the sports-com recreational facilities. There are some single-family houses located on some of these properties. So if developed, they would need to be redeveloped to meet the minimum standards as specified in our CH zone. The Planning Commission did study this area and recommend that the properties be rezoned from RD and RS15 to CH. If you have any questions about this, I'd be glad to answer them either before or after the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Are there any questions on Ms. Ely at this time before I open the public hearing? Okay, if not, is anyone willing to or wanting to speak on this matter in the audience? Anybody at all? Sir, please state your name and your address.
Vice Mayor Washington, members of the commission. My name is Leslie White. I'm a commercial broker with Parks Group Commercial Real Estate. I'm here tonight on behalf of Mr. A.E. Lowe. He owns the residence at 2110 Memorial, and he has asked me to convey to the council his wishes that the property be rezoned commercial. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Yes, thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Ronnie Page. I own the property at 2034 Memorial Boulevard, and I'm also representing the lady that owns the property next to me, Carol Bailey, who owns 2038 Memorial Boulevard. When people are against commercial rezoning, the first objection they come up with is increasing traffic. The increase in traffic is the main reason I am for this zoning change. The driveway to my property is next to the proposed north entrance to the Walmart. The north entrance to the Walmart, my driveway is on the south side of my property, so they're right next together. People who are looking to rent a home do not look for one where they will have to fight Walmart traffic to get in and out of their driveway. When the red light and the turn lanes into the Walmart, it will be impossible to turn left. You will have to cross 2 lanes of traffic and most likely 2 turn lanes. Then getting into the southbound lane would be just about impossible to do. It was also, turning right would be an adventure too, I would think. The income from this property is a very important part of my retirement income. This was a rent property for me, and I had the house rented up to a few months ago, which is unrentable now because of the Walmart proposal. Like I said, in present is not rented, and I have no one interested, and the only way I can realize the value of this property is to sell it. Everyone here knows that the value of commercial property is considerably more than that of residential property. With the commercial development along Memorial Boulevard, it is only common sense that it be rezoned along with all the property from the Walmart site to the Sportscom and beyond. These are the reasons that I am completely for this rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Vice Mayor and Council, I'm Charles McKnight. I own the property of 2118 Memorial Boulevard, and I am looking forward to this rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Jim McKnight, and I own the property at 2210 Memorial, and I'm also in favor of the rezoning.
Thank you, Mr. McKnight. Anyone else? Going once, going twice. We're going to end that public hearing and consider for passage on first reading ordinance 13-0Z-15 to rezone an area located along Memorial Boulevard to Commercial Highway CH District.
Not since I've been on the council has there been an area that makes more common sense to rezone to Commercial Highway than this piece of property right here, and I move for passage.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly?
Aye.
Mr. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington?
Aye. Item 15, pursuant to Resolution 13-OZ-R-16 adopted by the City Council on April 18, 2013, conduct a public hearing to consider rezoning approximately 39.8 acres located along Manson Pike from single-family residential 15 RS-15 district, 35.51 acres, 31.5, and local commercial CL district, 4.29 acres to residential multifamily 16 district. Mr. Charles and Mr. Jeffrey Smotherman, applicants. Notice of the said public hearing was published in the April 28, 2013 issue of the local newspaper. Ms. Ely.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Our next public hearing is to consider rezoning properties located south of Manson Pike. These properties are bounded on their eastern property line with Overall Creek, and they are located north of Puckett Creek. This study area consists of 4 parcels, 3 entire parcels, and a portion of 1 parcel. 3 of the parcels are zoned RS-15, and they are a total of 35.51 acres. And the portion of the parcel that's being considered for rezoning is zoned CL and consists of 4.29 acres. As I mentioned, Overall Creek runs along the eastern property lines of this area, and Puckett Creek runs along the southern property lines. The property to the east is zoned RM16 and is the location of Integra Creek Apartments, which is currently under construction. I believe they're nearly finished with construction of those apartments, but you certainly would have seen it had you drove down Manson Pike. To the south is a developing city single-family subdivision, which is zoned PRD, Planned Residential District. And currently, we have been reviewing and approving permit applications for new construction within that subdivision. The property to the west is zoned RS-15, is partially developed with some single-family homes, and the property to the north is an unincorporated area of Rutherford County and is the location of what used to be TSU's dairy farm. The subject area and the property to the west are part of an area that was annexed approximately in October 2011. Before then, it was what we were calling litigation area 1. So that lawsuit was settled, and these properties are located now in the city limits. And the reason I bring that up is because the properties zoned RS-15 were zoned RS-15 as an interim zoning since there was no companion zoning change request with their annexation, and they were zoned for residential or agricultural purposes in the county. They came into the city with an RS-15 zone. The property that's currently zoned CL was zoned for commercial purposes in the county, so when it was annexed, it came into the city with a default or interim zoning of CL. The property owners, the Smothermans, are now requesting for you to change the zoning of these properties for a total of 39.8 acres, to rezone them from RS-15 and CL to RM-16, which is multifamily residential district, and would permit a density of 16 dwelling units per acre. There's another map that you have that shows the location of the floodway, which is identified as pink or red on the map, and the location of the floodplain, which is the speckled area. And you can see that, I think I have the numbers. 20 acres of the total area is located within the floodway, and 16 acres are located within the floodplain. The area that's located in the floodway, which is that pink or red area, does not allow any type of development within that area. The area located in the floodplain could be developed if it meets the standards established by FEMA and by our local ordinance. There are also some other natural conditions that may limit the number of units that could be developed on this site. So because we know that there's a portion of the property that can't be developed, we expect, of course, there to not be any apartments built there. These three eastern portions of property are also located in our Gateway Design Overlay District, GDO 1. And I know that you are very familiar with the GDO, and we're all proud of it in our community and those standards that are established in it, and we have confidence that those standards can cause any type development to be constructed at a higher quality. So anything that would be developed on those properties, regardless, would be required to go through the GDO process and meet the GDO standards. The Planning Commission did consider this area and how it relates to the Blackman Land Use Study. The Blackman Land Use Study does include these parcels, and it indicates that these properties should be used for high density and commercial purposes, and it appears that this zoning change request would be consistent with that plan. The Planning Commission did recommend approval of this zoning change unanimously the night of their public hearing. I'd be glad to answer any questions you have either before or after the public hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Ely. Are there any questions of Ms. Ely at this time before we open up the public hearing? All right. If not, is there anyone in the audience willing to speak on this issue, on this public hearing?
My name is Kevin Gunther with Huddleston Steel. Good evening, Vice Mayor Washington and council members. We are here this evening to represent the applicant and request the property be rezoned. Primarily, as Ms. Ely had mentioned, it is in context with the long-range land use plan, and it would be well suited for a high-density type of development because of the need to be sensitive to the floodplain, and that type of development can cluster on the property and best take advantage of the city resources that have been invested in this area. I will be here to answer any questions you have. Thank you,
sir.
Good evening. My name is Matthew North. I own the property at 4320 Maximilian Circle in the Puckett Station subdivision. I'm against this rezoning for the purposes that there has been a large apartment complex just recently built that can be accessed from the Puckett Station subdivision the Integra Creek. Changing this rezoning to allow for another apartment development, I believe would increase the already overcrowded schools that we have in the Blackman area, and I request that this application be denied. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jeff Rainwater. I live at 1030 Reaching Run. I also sent all you an email that has a nice presentation in it that if anybody needs a copy, I have one. There we go. Okay.
Thank you. Just say thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So I want to speak first to let you know that I am against this, and for various reasons of what's going on in the Blackman community right now. The first thing I want to talk about is the impact of a influx of high density in the very specific area that this apartment complex is proposed for. For one, we have Bell Murfreesboro, which is a 230 unit, somewhere around there, right on Fortress, right around the corner from this property. Right across the creek from this property, we have Integra Creek, which is 264 units, which is right at the finish. They're actually, part of it's already occupied, I believe. And then this is right across the creek from that. So we've had this major influx of apartments, not to mention that also adjacent to the Puckett Station subdivision that we live in, you have almost 300 units of townhouses that are part of our neighborhood as part of a plan unit that has basically 3 steps in housing sizes. Then you also have, right before you enter across the bridge into our neighborhood, another one that's not built out yet of townhouses that start all the way from Fortress all the way to the creek and then been around to the Integra Creek area. And so we have a lot of very, very density, and then across Fortress you have Indian Creek, which has several hundred more townhouses. So we've had a lot of building recently that's not allowed the housing market to catch up to put out the mix that was originally planned for in the Blackman Youth Study, and the way the community looked forward to this area developing. It's gone a lot heavier density, which has led to a lot of different things. First thing I want to cover is, as you see the pictures there, this is a shot from rain a couple weeks ago of how it looks looking across the creek onto the subject property. So I know there was an article in the April 2nd Daily News Journal where they had talked about trying to convince the Corps to remove that from the floodway, which hopefully they won't be able to do because it's obvious that the creek is not usually that wide by any means, and it floods way up onto both that property, and the floodway does actually come into our neighborhood too at the very back of these homes here. As you can see, our detention ponds in this area are very large, and they have to be. And if you see the one, I don't have a picture of the one that's right outside Integra Creek, but it's about probably 35 feet deep. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous the way they had to be built to actually get all those apartments on that piece of property. So as we look at what's going on there, the impact of the neighbors, I expected high density around me, and I knew some of it was already there. I didn't expect to have another 500 units adjacent to my neighborhood because that really wasn't what the original plan was for that area. So Integra Creek was actually built on land that was originally slated in the Blackman Youth Study for, I believe it was like light commercial type development. It was moved to high density RM16, and then it was built on it. And I think that was part of the original farm that Puckett Station and this subject area was also part of. That part was rezoned outside of the plan that allowed for high density. The same thing is true with Puckett Downs in our neighborhood. Was zoned for was slated for medium density, not zoned, which was medium density. So was where Bell Murfreesboro, the apartment sits, was also in the Blackman land use study for, I think it was Office General, and Integra Creek was also not Integrity Creek, Indian Creek was also Office General, I believe is what it was. So there were only a handful of places around where they had zoned, where they had planned for extremely high densities. There was a couple down by where the new school is being built. There was one where Cross Creek Apartments actually sit right now. And there were two more, one of them by a road that never was built. It was supposed to be a major collector over behind where the BP is right there on Manson Pike, heading on the way out of town, right at the edge of town. There was one there, and then this property actually had one of them on it, but most of it, if you notice, is actually in the floodway. So if you see on there and you flip back to, and I'll cover this now, page 7, if you'll notice the red on the bottom is commercial in the Blackman use study. The commercial lines up with the existing neighborhood that's there, and it also lines up with most of the area that's outside of the floodway, which means if you follow the Blackman use study, it would leave you just a handful of apartments that you actually build in there if you follow this strictly. There's a reason that line goes across there like that, is you get a much better buffer with commercial, and it's a much better neighbor than high density. When you talk about incompatible densities side by side, if you have a family home that you've been living in for 30 years, you'd much rather have a small light commercial behind you than a 3-story apartment complex to where your backyard doesn't get the sun until noon. You'd much rather have a 1-story with a proper buffer. You don't have the light shining all the time on you. And the buffer, type C buffer for apartments to residential, is pretty light. It's not like you get with a commercial type development that has a berm and the fences and all the greenery on it. So that's kind of how the Blackman use study kind of plays out, that there were supposed to only be about 5 different areas there. We have Stonecrest down on 96 as part of this area. We have Bell Murfreesboro. We have Integrity Creek. We have Cross Creek. For there. And then also last month, the city issued permits for 180 units near Kingdom Ridge. So that throws you 5 complexes right there. You pretty much used up what was supposed to be as far as apartments really in this specific area. One of the problems is you've shoved a lot of them right in on top of us instead of spread out through the community like they were supposed to be. You know, there needs to be some apartments, and there needs to be townhouses and houses people move through different stages of their lives. Well, we understand that, but we've kind of had an overrun of extremely high density there. So the next thing I want to cover is what this does quickly to what the school system is, what's going on in this specific area. Every school in the area is way over capacity right now. We know there's a new elementary school coming on board. However, if you build 180, you build this one up to 300 to 400, depending on what it is. I think 320 is what the planning commission was saying was probably realistic, or 300. And you use the actual numbers that I got from the county as far as what it yields. You're looking at adding, along with the 2 more that are coming your way soon, right beside the new West Elementary School, you're looking at somewhere between about 800 to 1,000 new units that will be built over by the time this school opens. And if you build out the rest of the stuff in Puckett Station, or not build all of it out, just the townhomes are selling pretty quick, along with the other ones that are already ready to develop. The road's already cut. You're going to wind up with the school by the time you take enough students out of Scales and you take enough pressure off Blackman Elementary, you're going to wind up with very little growth possibility in this area. So that's kind of where we are with the schools. We've already been through one issue with the county schools wanting to send, the north half of Blackman out to another school away from, the quality school system we moved into. And right now we have a very severe overcrowding. This also feeds into the middle school and the high school, which are very overcrowded at this point, and there's no relief in sight for those. A little bit for the middle school, but almost nothing for the high school, because Stewart's Creek will be full at the same time. So it's not, there's really nowhere to go for those students. So in conclusion, if we think about this holistically, looking at the land use study and what was actually slated for this, we pretty much used up our high density already. that was slotted for this area, and we need to keep. We need to think about how we develop future, that we make sure that we keep an average tax rate for both the city and the county per average tax collections per home, enough revenue to bond out those schools and things like that. Well, apartments doesn't get you there. You need you need homes built out at the same time to blend that together so that you have the proper tax income to take care of those. Building a bunch of apartments adds the students, but it doesn't add the tax base you need to make that happen. County already said they want another 3.8 this year. They make 3 out of 6 years they were having, and most of their budget schools, so we know where it's going. So we're kind of in a situation here where, and the last thing is, they're basically ringing apartments all the way around our neighborhood, which was not the original design. And in this specific area, I can understand if you wanted to trade out Integrity Creek for this piece as far as what the study says, but then you've already used up pretty much the trade-off in the area, So we ask that you deny this rezoning and, take into consideration the homes that are already there, and be very sensitive, especially to the people that were annexed that didn't want to be, and now they're sticking a apartment complex right up behind them, which kind of, we need to welcome them to the city, not necessarily give them some vindication on, them fighting to come into the city, because it's the kind of thing they didn't want. So now I know I don't live in that neighborhood, but we need to be good stewards of the neighbors we do welcome into the city, and think about that next group, because we're going to have to annex some more as we go. That's just part of growing, part of life. That next group might not be very happy about it either if they see how we treated this one. So thank you for consideration, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Pam Harless. I live at 4118 Pretoria Run in Puckett Station. My husband and I moved here 3 years ago, and in those 3 years we have watched Murfreesboro grow at a wonderful but very tremendous rate. We moved here from Charleston, South Carolina, a community that when we moved there originally 14 years ago was a very tiny little town. We watched it boom because everybody wanted to live there, just like everybody's wanting to live in Murfreesboro now. Murfreesboro was recently and the Nashville area were recently rated number 5 on one of the top 10 places to live in the United States. So I think we're going to see a lot more people coming in and out of this area. We're going to see a lot more growth. But I think what I would like to say is that I would like to speak on behalf of the people who live here. We would like to see people move into Murfreesboro and make it their home, not just live in multifamily and be transient in and out all the time. Sorry. I think we're very concerned about that. We're concerned about the growth of the city, just as we would any place that we live, because we're proud to live here. All I ask is that you consider the fact that we're speaking from a standpoint of not just multifamily and the neighborhoods that are connected to all of this and the impact it has, but as a whole community. Thank you.
Hey, do me a favor and repeat your name.
Pam Harless.
Okay, right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Vice Mayor, Ron Washington and council people, I'm Larry Sims of Sims Realtors Auctioneers, and I represent the Smothermans. The Smothermans own this property for 3 generations, and Mildred, Randy and Charles, or we call him Randy, Smotherman is their mother. Mildred's has got some health issues, and one of the things they want to do is try to sell this property. They're going to have to put her in a nursing home pretty soon. So they've been pretty good stewards on it. They farmed this property for many, many years, and they've owned it. This is a challenging piece of property, obviously, as you saw all the thing that has to do with the floodway and flood area. We've been with the planning director, Mr. Adelot, probably working on this property at least 5 or 6 years, and it appears this is the best solution for the property for the best highest return on it. We would like to see you to look at this and work with us. We had 8 acres of commercial. We downgraded it to 4 acres. We think it's a good plan. We also know that as far as apartments, probably the majority of people move in this area, move in and rent apartments, and then they buy homes a little bit later. It's a pretty good turnover, so this is a pretty good area for that. We also know that the apartments don't have as much demand on the school system, believe it or not, than everybody thinks it does. So there's not as much demand there, and we know it's crowded in that area. But I'm here. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Sealy.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. I will close the public hearing, and now consider for passage on first reading ordinance 13-0Z-16 to rezone an area located along Manson Pike to residential multifamily RM16 district. First reading.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Mm-hmm.
I know the requester on this ordinance or request is last name is Smotherman, and he and I have met in the past, but to my knowledge, I don't think we're related, are we, Randy? If we are, you can tell us how. But just so there's no misunderstanding that the Smothermans are taking care of the Smothermans in this situation, I just want to make it absolutely clear that there's no relationship that I know of.
Thank you, Councilman.
Vice Mayor, I would like to ask Mr. Adelot if he would. There were some issues that were brought up by Mr. Rainwater about how this request comes into play with how the Blackman land use study has evolved over the years. Can you address some of those points for us, Mr. Adelot?
I'll try. The Blackman land use study was adopted in 2000 after a very extensive study process that involved a Citizens Advisory Committee, members of the Planning Commission, a joint session with the Rutherford County Planning Commission, ultimately adopted by both the city and the county and by the city council. The process had a lot of public input, and it really was in advance of most of the growth that we see in the Blackman area today. We saw the development of the Blackman area coming with the construction of the schools. So the city felt that it was very important that we begin to get prepared. The Blackman schools brought into the area the sanitary sewer, which has been a catalyst for development. The study examined quite a number of issues. Some of them involved roads. Some of them involved the traffic that would be on those roads. Some of it involved the land use, the type of land use, and the densities. The map itself, as it was recommended by the Citizens Advisory Committee, actually recommended high-density residential for this entire tract. And then at the last meeting with the joint session of the city's Planning Commission and the county's Planning Commission, there was a request by the Smotherman family to make a portion of it to commercial and to have the remainder of it remain as high-density residential. The county, in sympathy with their request, amended the plan. And the city Planning Commission, in a spirit of cooperation with the county, agreed to do that also. So the map did depict an area of commercial along the frontage and a high-density residential for the remainder. The areas shown on the Blackman land use map are not hard and fast lines. It is not a zoning map. It's a general policy guide. It's not a specific policy guide, but a general policy guide. It's for general guidance of land use patterns and densities. It's not a precise matter. It's not a zone ordinance like the zoning map is. The lines on it, they was identified that these areas would be bubbles and balloons with the idea that they could contract and enlarge. The boundary that was chosen for the two was more of a depiction of a commercial area in the front and a depiction of high-density residential in the back, not a precise location for it to be an exact buffer between the two areas. owners of the property did convince the county to zone a portion of the frontage to commercial before it was annexed into the city. This area was actually poised to be annexed, or actually the owners were poised to request annexation before the city initiated annexation on its own back in 2006. When we did that, they were among the property owners that were caught up in the zoning litigation. During that period, they did convince the county to zone a portion of it to commercial, which was absolutely consistent with the plan. One of the confusing things about that, and one of the reasons why I gave that lengthy explanation about this property, is it has become a little bit of a point of discussion as we've looked at acquiring right-of-way and having appraisals done, exactly what all that meant. It's always been my belief that, and I think I even stated at the time of the adoption of the plans, that we would have to find our way a little bit as we got into a more closer planning picture, because there was never any deliberation by the Citizens Advisory Group. It was really just something that happened at the last minute and in cooperation with the county. The one thing that is clear, it did identify a large area of high-density residential for this area. There was a recognition that the interchange, the area around the interchange, should have a higher intensity of activity and land use opportunities than areas that were further away, whether it be of a commercial nature or of a residential nature. The idea was that the area around the interchange should have a higher intensity, higher density, if you will. We looked at the roads and the idea that the Manson Pike at first would be constructed as 3 lanes, but we acquired right-of-way for a 5-lane road, recognizing that eventually, as time passes, we'll be returning to that road for some improvements. And in fact, on the east side of the overall creek, it is already constructed to 5 lanes, and the bridge itself is constructed for the 5 lanes. Eventually, the road itself will be upgraded. It is my belief, in looking at the total document, not just the maps, but looking at the densities permitted, looking at the records that I've had, looking at the land use patterns, looking at the road capacities, looking at our design standards, and looking at how they relate to the Blackman document, that this is still generally in conformance with the Blackman study and the way it was recommended by the Citizens Advisory Committee to the Planning Commissions.
Thank you.
Members of the council, Mr. Rainwater had a very articulate program, and I admired his presentation, and I also had an opportunity to look at his study that he presented to you. One thing that I want to maybe point out about that is the floodway of Overall Creek. Overall Creek has an unusually wide floodway at that location. You can see it on the maps, and we took care to present that to the council. It's my belief that although Mr. and Smotherman and his brother are optimistic that there might be some change to the floodway, it's my belief that there's no change likely in the foreseeable future, and that any change, when you tinker with the floodplain, the FEMA's liable to make it bigger instead of smaller. and so I don't foresee it being contracted in the floodway. I believe the floodway creates a very real buffer for the property across the creek. The floodwaters that you see in the creek, that's not a 100-year flood that he has in his photographs. That is actually a very more normal occurrence and expected occurrence, and it is the creek doing what the creek is supposed to do, and that is to convey stormwater. And because of the way the geography, or rather the geology is in the area, it's going to be a very wide floodway. So it's not a flooding problem, and those detention areas and the Puckett Station were built big on purpose because it was believed by the engineers that was what needed to be done and to meet our requirements. So that is a very normal function. I saw the photograph. I'm aware of I watch that creek when it floods because I'm always, that's one of the things I do as a planner, so that I'm abreast of what's happening as an impact of the developments we approve.
Mr. A. Lott, you've explained to me several times that the best buffer you can have is distance. And this looks like, with the floodplain there, an excellent example of being able to have distance built in without having to request it. It's fairly uncommon since I've been on the council for someone to ask for commercial development next to a residential area. I mean, as a general rule, most of the things that we've encountered since I've been here has been someone saying, give us a buffer between us and the commercial property. Although there's not a written rule that says you have to do that, I think it's a good idea. So are you comfortable with, or are there any restrictions or anything that have been written so far that would protect the neighborhoods around it, and other than the natural buffer that's there? I mean, are you comfortable with the plan that as it's presented?
From a zoning standpoint, yes, sir, I am. But I say that with the reality that we will see this plan again when it comes back for site plan review. And when we sit down for site plan review, we're going to look at orientation of buildings. We really do steer developers and designers away from bad practices like putting balconies over someone's backyard. Right. And really, that's a very uncomfortable situation for the residents of the apartments. They have no choice. They want, so if there's good design, they're not put in that position. Real tall buildings in those kind of places. Also, with the gateway design standards, we just have more ability to shape the development than we would otherwise. It's really, I think that we can, the people in Puckett Station, they've got a great buffer. That the creek, the vegetation, the distance, they will have a great buffer. The people in Butler Manor to the west, they're going to really be relying upon the city to be cognizant of their situation, and we will.
Any comments or questions from council members?
I've got a question, Mr. Alott. I was reading in the Planning Commission notes, and I think Ms. Jones asked a question about the schools in the area. And if we take a global look, and we know that there's on Fortress, and I can't remember because I know we've had this conversation before, when we crossed 96, we did change that. That's Fortress now, because I think if I remember, that used to be another street name.
Well, actually, on the south side of 96, it is Battalion.
Okay, that's what I knew. There was something that was weird there. We've got there's an apartment complex that's under construction there, getting ready to get started, I believe.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then we've got a complex or two that's on Fortress, just right from that. I think that, if I remember, it went to auction several years ago or something like that, right next to, behind the Walgreens or CVS. Is that correct? There's an apartment complex there.
On the north side of 96?
Yeah, going back towards the interstate.
There's one on the east side of Fortress, north of 96.
Yes, going back towards Blackman.
Oh, yes, and that's called Cross Creek. It's
Okay.
right there just south of the Blackman School.
So then we run on down Fortress, and we've got the ones that Mr. Rainwater talked about. So, and then, looking at our zoning public hearings that we have coming up on June the 3rd, we have the west, or is it 10th, Ms. McGannon?
I don't remember.
Okay.
16th.
All right. In June, we have two large tracts that are coming up that we're looking at. So I know that we say, okay, we have to let the market dictate what's going to happen, and I'm all for that. I don't think I can come up here and say well, we don't want any more car lots, or we don't want, that's not our job. But how do we take a global look if we know that there's crowding in the area? How do we work with the school board, or how do we work with those other agencies besides saying, here's 300 units, deal with it?
Mr. McFarland, this is not something I've discussed with Mr. Lyons, but I think that he would give me the green light when I'm undertaking. I have had the opportunity to talk with my staff about these issues. It brings to mind that several years ago, and you may have been a junior member on the Planning Commission at that time, but there was a concern about the inventory of land zoned RM16 for multifamily several years ago, because that inventory of available land had dwindled to the point where we were seeing a lot of requests coming up. And there was a lot of discussion about how that affected the school system, particularly the area around Reeves Rogers Elementary. So what I want to do is to study the issue of multifamily and how it relates to schools and how it relates to the impact of location. One of my challenges is staffing capacity, and we'll probably be talking about that a little bit next week. But it's my hope that when I have some staffing capacity to immerse themselves in the study, we will. We've already made some inquiries with the school boards. They seem to be very willing and interested in helping with this because they would like to have this type of information as well. Sure. Both the city school board and the county school board to help us find out where children reside. If in fact we are creating a situation with multifamily that's overcrowding schools themselves in an undue manner, we want to know about it. And we want to be more strategic in our approach. There have been statements made to me that with the change in the economic contraction we've experienced, that there are more families residing in apartments. That seems to be anecdotal information rather than scientific. I hear the people who manage apartments tell me otherwise, but I hear people who purport to observe to tell me other. I don't know, and I want to find out. I don't have that done. And once we get underway with this, it'll take a better part of a month to go through the information we need. We've been doing some inquiries to find out what it's going to take.
I just think, as a council, that's information that is extremely prudent, that when we make decisions, we look at traffic counts, we look at sewer capacity, we look at stormwater capacity, we look at density, we look at all kinds of different things. And I really think that if we know or we have a fear that that may be an issue, I think that that's something that we need to look at. I think if we had our water and sewer staff and Mr. Gore was up here with a snazzy PowerPoint telling us that that this area of town was having a sewer capacity issue, I think we would all really take heed to say, well, we need to find out if that's the case before we do something. And that's just my opinion on looking at that before we. I don't feel comfortable until I would get that information to see how this would impact that, because I don't know. It may not impact it. It may impact it. So that's what I would like to see, is get that information.
Well, as I said, this is something that I have been discussing with particularly Mr. Blomley, who happens to be on vacation this week. But that's something that I've discussed with him. He's made some inquiries with the schools about how we go about it, trying to get him staged for it. It's going to be a little bit of a staff-intensive exercise because there's going to be a lot of addresses to look up and find out where they are. It's going to be more than just interviewing a couple of people about what they think. This is going to be something that has address verification going with it, and then double-checking with the apartment complexes about what they're saying. Sometimes what you see and what is really the facts merge a little bit, diverge.
Well, when we look at an annexation study, we have all the information in our packet that tells us we can provide water and sewer service. We can provide police service. We've got Mr. Mr. Smith will tell us this is how much it's going to cost me to do trash pickup in this area. Fire department will say we need X number of fire hydrants in this area, and I just think it'd be prudent to have that information also. So I'm off my soapbox now.
Council members, what are your wishes?
I would move for deferral until we get that information.
I'll second your motion.
Ms. Wright?
Mr. Gilly?
Aye.
Mr. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington?
Aye. Item 16, pursuant to a resolution 13-08-R-17 adopted by the City Council on April 18, 2013, conduct a public hearing to consider annexing approximately 90.37 acres located along John Bragg Highway and consider a proposed plan of services for the area. Whitestone Property LLC and Mr. Marshall Lyon applicants. Notice of said public hearing was published in the April 28, 2013 issue of a local newspaper. Ms. Eagley.
Thank you, sir. Our next public hearing is to consider adopting a plan of services to annex some property located along Highway 70 South, also known as John Bragg Highway. The property is a total of 90.37 acres, and that 90.37 acres includes 15.2 acres owned by the Dill family, 20.86 acres that is, and 39.76 acres that is owned by the Whitestone Property LLC and Mr. Marshall Lyon, and also 14.55 acres of right-of-way, which is being included, which is approximately 2,503 linear feet of right-of-way of Highway 70S, or 70 South. This plan of services has been included in your agenda materials. Also, I have a map on the screen that shows the area owned by the various property owners. The areas shaded orange are the properties that were initially requesting to be annexed to benefit from city-provided services. Those properties in of themselves are not directly contiguous with current city limits, and therefore could not be annexed, just the two of those parcels. So Mr. Dill joined in the application, and Planning Commission included that as additional study area, which now with the Dill, Whitestone, and Lyon property, they are contiguous with current city limits. Also included is the right-of-way, which you see shaded purple on the map before you as well. All of these properties are located within the city's urban growth boundary, and again are contiguous with current city limits, so we could annex them. I provided you with a plan of services that outlines the services that will be available to serve these properties and when they'll be available. All city services will be available to these properties when annexation becomes effective, with the exception of sanitary sewer service. It appears there's not sufficient capacity available to serve this area, and another means of sanitary waste disposal will be required, or there may be limitations on the ability of the property to develop until the owners are able to make adjustments or adequate extensions to the city's sanitary sewer service. The applicants are very much aware that the sanitary sewer service to this property is very limited and may not be available in capacities that would support development. Potential of the property under the zoning classifications which have been requested and will be the subject of the next public hearing. The applicants have been in discussions also with city administration and the water and sewer department for the possibility of the city amending the city's regulations to allow this development of this property to proceed using a step system or some other acceptable means of sanitary waste disposal. You do have the annexation study and plan of services, and you should conduct a public hearing before making your recommendation whether to adopt that plan of services. If you have any questions about it or any other of the items, I'll be glad to answer them either before or after the public hearing.
All right, council members, are there any questions of Ms. Eagley before we open the public hearing?
Mr. Gunther's here if you have questions as well.
Okay. With that said, I will open the public hearing. Is there anybody here for or against any conversation on this proposal?
Yes, good evening again, Vice Mayor Washington and council members. We are respectfully asking for annexation and rezoning of the property. We understand that sanitary sewer is an issue for capacity. We're fully aware of that. We do think the land is very well suited for the proposed zoning we're asking, in that this is close to the infrastructure as far as roadways. It's very close to the university as far as student apartment housing as a possibility, and the commercial growth that has occurred on this side of the city. So we want the opportunity to extend that growth in what we think fits well with the long-range goals of the city. And we want to do that in light of the fact that the applicant fully understands they have to have the burden of proof to, if they do provide a step system or some type of system to increase capacity, they need to do that in compliance with city standards, with water and sewer standards, and they would diligently pursue that in light of the ability to do it correctly and with the guidance of the proper agencies. So with that, we'll be here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gunther.
Good evening, Vice Mayor Washington and members of the council. I'm Mark Lee with Site Engineering Consultants. I've been a longtime family friend to the Dill and Rushing family, and Not all of them could be here tonight. There are a few, but they asked that if I would, to convey their wishes tonight. Their property is shown in the purple on the map that was just up a moment ago. They wanted me to let you know that they have not requested their property to be annexed, and they prefer that it not be annexed. However, they understand that you all have a job to do, and that if you must annex their property, they would prefer that it would be a thin sliver and not the amount that is shown on the drawing that you had. Some various distances have been thrown out, 10 feet, 15 feet, 20 feet, 50 feet. They would prefer something small along that line, along their frontage on John Bragg Highway, and not the larger portion that was shown on your map. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Lee.
My name's Keith Pinkston. I live at 308.5 Double Springs Road. We live in the little corner that was left in the RM16 part. We're against it being rezoned because, we like where we live. We're off the road, but we're close to town. But if it does, I think last meeting it was going to be a buffer zone B. We would like to at least get it a D or an E so we could have a privacy fence around our yard to kind of keep people out. And I just want to make everybody aware that there's also 2 Civil War grave sites on the property behind it. And I talked to the state archaeologist, and it's a big deal getting it moved and all that. I'm sure y'all know. That's pretty much all I've got to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I'll close the public hearing now. Consider for passage on first reading ordinance 13-08-17, the annex an area located along John Bragg Highway, and adopt for same a plan of services. Council members, what are your wishes?
Before we get at that, Vice Mayor, I just wanted to point out to the last gentleman that spoke, the issue that he raised is something I believe we would deal with the next public hearing, the zoning application. Is that correct, Ms. McGann?
Yes.
I didn't want him to think that we're overlooking the request that he had made.
This is just for the annex.
I move that we approve the annexation.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly?
Aye.
Mr. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
No.
Vice Mayor Washington?
Aye. All righty. Let's go to item 17. Pursuant to Resolution 13-OZ-R-18 adopted by the City Council on April 18, 2013, conduct a public hearing to consider zoning approximately 20.86 acres as Highway Commercial CH District and approximately 39.76 acres as residential multifamily 16 RM16 District located along John Bragg Highway, simultaneous with annexation of Whitestone Property LLC and Mr. Marshall Line applicants. Notice of said public hearing was published in the April 28, 2013 issue of a local newspaper.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Our next public hearing is to consider zoning a portion of the properties previously annexed to CH and RM16 simultaneous with their annexation. These properties are located along the south side of John Bragg Highway, or Highway 70S, 70 South. They are located just west of the Walmart located along South Rutherford Boulevard. And you can see the location of the Walmart shown on the map that I've provided for you. That property is zoned PCD, Planned Commercial District. The property, the other properties along South Rutherford Boulevard are zoned CH, Planned Commercial District, and RS15. The requested property the property properties which have requested a zoning change have requested that the orange property, the property that's located along the highway, be zoned CH Highway Commercial District, and that's approximately 20.86 acres. The property to the rear and the property shaded purple on your map, it consists of approximately 39.76 acres, and their request is for you to zone that RM16 simultaneous with its annexation. The property owners believe, or the applicants believe, that these properties are well suited for commercial development along the frontage of John Bragg Highway, that the remainder of the area is well suited for multifamily developments that would in part support the university because of its proximity to Middle Tennessee State University. Under the proposed zoning classification for RM16, which is 16 dwelling units per acre, the property could develop with approximately 636 multifamily dwelling units. However, because of sanitary waste disposal limitations, the easements, the power line easements located along the property, and stormwater considerations, it's not likely that this number of units can be achieved. The planning director has studied this area and suggests that the property is actually more suited or will likely develop with approximately 6 dwelling units per acre because of the drainage and sanitary waste limitations on the property. The Planning Commission did study this area and recommended that the properties be zoned CH and RM16 simultaneous with their annexation unanimous the night of the public hearings. Mr. Gunther again is here this evening and will answer any questions you may have about this request, as will staff at any time you have them.
Thank you, Ms. Ely. Are there any questions of Ms. Ely at this time? All right, if not, we will open the public hearing and ask if anyone wants to address this issue for or against. Seeing none, council members, I close the public hearing. What are your wishes?
A couple of questions, Vice Mayor. First, as to the RM16, do we have the same issue we need to address here, Mr. Alott, that we were dealing with the Blackman piece we dealt with just a couple of hearings ago?
There was
I'm treated one consistently in that regard.
there was a letter in the back by Mr. Anderson on this one that had.
I want that public that to see where we're at. If you'll let us know.
Yeah, there's a Mr. Alott. I'm sure you know there's a letter in this from Mr. Anderson that just stated from those guys about, or from the city schools regarding that they didn't see that this would be significant.
The situation with this property is that there has been a lot of discussion about developing it for student housing, multifamily to support MTSU students. There has been absolutely zero discussion for standard market rate apartments. The MTSU student housing, there will be, well, it's predictable that there will be 0 children, as is typical of all the other MTSU student housing complexes we have in the area. And I mean 0 students because they do not rent to married families or to children or families with children. They manage them to orient towards the university. In fact, they've talked about, for this property, a low-density, a cottage-style type of development rather than your standard garden-style apartments.
And then the second question I have, Mr. Gunther, this is for you. The last gentleman that spoke regarding the annexation hearing had brought up the issue of additional buffering for the square that he is on by way of fence or something. Is that something that your clients could work with?
I'm sure as the site plan is brought forward to the city, is the surrounding area that we would be adjacent to would certainly be considered. I believe right now, as it stands, we'd have to have at least a type C buffer, and one of the options is to place a fence along with evergreen trees, and we could certainly look at accommodating that at the site plan level.
If you don't mind, would you discuss that with the gentleman after the meeting?
Certainly.
Get the opportunity to, please.
Yes.
That's all that I have, Vice Mayor.
Okay. All right, then, consider for passage on first read ordinance 13OZ-18 zoning an area located along John Brick Highway to Highway Commercial CH District and Residential Multifamily RM16 District simultaneous with the annexation.
Move for passage on first reading.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris. I'm sorry. Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
No.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye. Item 18 pursuant, hang with me on this one, this is a long one. Pursuant to Resolution 13-OZ-R-19 adopted by the City Council on April 18, 2013, to conduct a public hearing to consider zoning approximately .69 acres from commercial free in CH district to highway commercial CH district, approximately .20 acres from general office OG district to highway commercial CH district, approximately 20.3 acres from planned commercial development PCD district to highway commercial CH district, approximately .13 acres from planned residential district PRD district to highway commercial. I think I'm going to skip that. District to highway commercial CH district, approximately 1.58 acres from planned commercial development PCD district to general office OG district, and approximately .39 acres from planned residential development PRD district to general office OG district, located along Salem Highway at Casey Lane. LP mortgage applicant. Notice of said public hearing was published in the April 28, 2013 issue of a local newspaper. Miss Ely.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very good job, Vice Mayor. You were born to do this. The next public hearing is to consider zoning properties from PCD to both CH and OG. The property, and a simple way of explaining it, the property is bisected with a creek, and all the property to the north of the creek, between the creek and that highway, is proposed to be zoned to CH, Highway Commercial District. Those properties have frontage along Highway 99 and Cason Lane. The property that's adjacent to an existing assisted living facility along Asher's Fork Drive and shown in purple on the map is the property that's located south of the creek, and the proposal is to change that zoning from PCD to OG, General Office District Residential. There's a small portion of that property that's also zoned single-family residential district. In 2008, the Planning Commission and City Council reviewed and approved a program book to amend the majority of the property to PCD, Planned Commercial District. And since that time, there has been a change in our economy that's caused the viability of that development plan to erode. And the original developer, the Three Rivers Commercial Development, which is what this was a part of, is no longer involved. The current owner does not see any ability to to have the property constructed according to the plans that were approved, and desires to see the property rezoned to CH to allow the property to be more marketable, and because it's located along a major highway. And then the property that's adjacent to the existing assisted living facility to be zoned OG, General Office District Residential, which doesn't allow as the same types of uses allowed in the CH District Commercial Highway, but allow those uses you see along major highways, and the OG District would have a limited number of uses that could be permitted, which of course would include offices. Included with this request are several, what you could say are odds and ends of zoning districts as well. And you can see the heavy black lines on the map show the various zoning districts. And this, in a way, is also cleaning up the zoning lines so that these parcels have one consistent zoning. So again, the request is to rezone the property from PCD and the various other zones to CH and to OG. The Planning Commission did recommend approval of this zoning change request, unanimous, the evening of its public hearing. If you have any questions, of course, I'll be glad to answer them.
All right, council members, do you have any questions of Ms. Ely before we open the public hearing? If not, I will now open the public hearing, and anyone wishing to address this issue, please come to the podium and give us your name and address. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Members of the council, I'm John Harney. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, LP Mortgage, as well as Matt Taylor with SEC Engineering. This was a PUD, as Ms. Ely has said, that was put together several years ago, and even in good times, I'm not sure if it was practical to develop it the way it was laid out. There is a large creek that goes through the back end of this property that creates a pretty good-sized buffer in and of itself. So we thought it was practical to do the commercial on the basically the north side of the property and the OG back there next to the assisted living project, and thought that would be consistent. We're both here and glad to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay, council members, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and consider for passage on first reading ordinance 13 OZ-19 to rezone an area located along Salem Highway, Casey Lane, the Highway Commercial CH District and General Office OG District. First reading.
Move for passage.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye. I think this is our last public hearing, or maybe we got one more. Yeah, we got one more. Pursuant to Resolution 13 OZ-R-2 adopted by the City Council on April 18, 2013, conduct a public hearing to consider a proposed amendment to approximately 1.3 acres within the planned residential development, PRD district, located within Winslow Park, PRD. J. Wyatt Holmes applicant notice of said public hearing was published in the April 28, 2013 issue of the local newspaper. Ms. Dealey again.
Thank you, sir. This is our second to last public hearing, but you'll be happy to know this public hearing, the next one, received favorable responses from those neighbors that were near the properties. This is a PRD amendment for 1.3 acres located within the Winslow Park PRD. Winslow Park is located along Blackman Road and also along Pendleton Boulevard, north of Pendleton Boulevard. As you're aware, a planned development has a very specific plan that applies to the property, and any major deviation from that plan requires a legislative action by the City Council, and that's why this is coming back before you. The specific plan approved for this property shows that these areas shaded orange were a part of the Winslow Park development, were to have 5-unit attached structures. The current owner of those lots no longer desires to build that type of product, but would prefer to develop them with single-family detached dwellings instead. And there are single-family detached dwellings in the subdivision, so they would be consistent with what is already located in that area. So Mr. Young, or Councilman Young, often calls this a downzoning since it's decreasing the amount or the type of development that's permitted. So the change is going from 5-unit attached structures to single-family detached structures for just the area shaded orange. The hatched area is showing you what is considered the Winslow Park portion of this planned development. The Homeowners Association did reach out to us, and they let us know that they did support this application and were in favor of the change. If you have any questions regarding this, I'll be glad to answer them. There are some examples of the proposed homes in your on your iPad in your PDF. And so you can view those and see the type of development being proposed in this area.
All right, council members, do you have any questions of Ms. Ely before we open the public hearing? At this time, we will open the public hearing. Anyone wanting to have any comments on this issue as it's presented?
Good evening, Vice Mayor Washington, City Council. My name is Axel David. I represent Citizens Against Photo Enforcement. I apologize, I have to use this forum. I can't do it during a normal City Council meeting. I just want to preface this real quick, and I'll make it quick because I know we want to get out of here. I've been here about an hour and a half. The photo enforcement situation, I have nothing against the police or the chief of police.
Hold up.
Go ahead.
Not allowed.
I was informed it was allowed by City Councilman.
Who? Not allowed, sir.
Okay. Sorry about that. I'll consult with him.
No problem. Anybody want to speak on this issue? If not, I'll close the public hearing, and we'll consider for passage on first reading ordinance 13-0Z-20 to amend an area located in Winslow Park, PRD.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly. Aye. Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye. This is our final public hearing pursuant to Resolution 13-0A 21 adopted by the City Council on April 18, 2013, conduct a public hearing to consider annexing approximately 1.81 acres located at 841 Osborne Lane and consider a proposed plan of services for the area. Mr. Clinton Meadows is the applicant. Notice of said public hearing was published in the April 28, 2013 issue of the local newspaper.
Thank you, sir. The final public hearing I'm bringing to you this evening is to consider annexing property located north of Osborne Lane. This property is approximately 1.81 acres and is owned by Mr. Clint Meters. Mr. Meters approached city staff after he purchased this property, but while he was trying to build a single-family house. During the beginning stages of construction, he realized that there's been some fill placed on the property, which is not very good for the sanitary waste disposal system that is used in the county, and that it would be very, very expensive for him to try to mediate that fill placement that was done before he ever bought the property. And so because sanitary sewer is close to the applicant and is available to the applicant, he has made a request that the city annex his property to benefit from city-provided services, especially from city-provided sanitary sewer. Included with this annexation is 225 linear feet of Osborne Lane right-of-way, so that would be the right-of-way contiguous with the subject property. This property is contiguous with current city limits along its eastern property line. The properties to the east are developed city single-family subdivisions. Property to the north, west, and south are part of the unincorporated area of Rutherford County and are zoned for residential purposes. This property is also located within the city's urban growth boundary. I believe it is staff's belief that this will be a relatively easy annexation to effect. And as a matter of fact, because it's simple, the Rutherford County Building and Codes Department has agreed to allow the applicant to obtain permits through the city for the construction of a single-family house on this lot, pending finalization of the annexation process, so that it would simplify the permitting process for the applicant. Included in this agenda, in your agenda packet, is a plan of services which outlines the services the city can provide and provides a time frame for when they can be provided. The city will be able to provide all city services in a reasonable manner. You should conduct a public hearing prior to making your decision regarding adopting the plan of services. If you have any questions regarding this application, I'll be glad to answer them at any time.
Council members, do you have any questions for Ms. Ely before we open the public hearing? Thank you, Ms. Ely. If not, we will conduct a public hearing on this particular issue. Anyone for or against, any comments on this resolution? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Consider for passage on first reading ordinance 13-08-21 to annex an area at 841 Osborne Lane and adopt the same a plan of services. Council members, what's your pleasure?
Move for passage.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gelly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Thank you. And his city staff, I want to thank you for working with this fellow. I know a little bit about this issue here, and he was in a tree. And the city staff and the county worked real diligently together to help this fellow out. So I appreciate y'all doing that. Item 21 here from City Manager regarding the Empower team.
Mr. Vice Mayor, members of City Council, this is another in a series of follow-ups to our staff retreat. As we've shared with you previously, we had challenged our leadership team in a couple of different areas. We challenged them about how we can continue to focus on performance, how we could focus on customer service, and we also talked about what else can we do to help empower our city employees, to trust them to do a great job and continue to provide great services to our community. So the Empower team has taken that idea, studied it, and they'd like to give you a short presentation this evening.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Vice Mayor, Council, and City staff. I'm here to represent what we call the Empower Committee. The Empower team was formed after October 2012 retreat. Our team has determined that empowerment could be shown to measure employees' engagement. Also, our team has determined that reviewing the effectiveness of engagement survey be worthwhile for effective feedback. Our committee is made up Mr. Joseph Alott, Mr. Mike Bowman, Ms. Linda Burke, Mr. Jim Crumley, Mr. Glenn Godwin, and myself, Roger Toombs. We'd also like to appreciate that Ms. Burke joined us in March of 2013. We're glad to have you. One of the things that was asked, Mr. Joseph Alott asked to determine necessary focus when asking what is engagement. And some of these answers were taken from the governance survey done in 2012. What is an employee engagement? An engaged employee is enthusiastic and proudly involved in his or her organization and to day-to-day job responsibility, and engagement keeps employees committed to their work. As you look at this slide, growing evidence about engaged employees, and also we'll be providing the council with a copy of the governing exchange issue brief. It reports highlighted during our presentation. Total sample of 2,259 state and local government employees, also employees level of different types of government, random samples of 1,975 state and local government employees across other areas of state and local government. Why does employees engagement matter to the city of Murfreesboro? As you can look, 2.5 times more likely to feel they can make a difference, 2.5 times more likely to recommend their workplace to others, and 3 times likely to report being very satisfied in their job. Our commitment to service excellence support these facts from the governing survey. Many efforts taken to engage citizens is with the Police and Fire Academy, the Citizen Academy, and also the Murfreesboro City Academy. But not only an organization-wide employee engagement effort. We also, one of the things we have done, Mr. City Manager has done, is a roundtable, which was the first method taken on employee engagement. As you see on this slide here, an engagement index, according to the governing survey, result only 58% of all public sector employees fully engaged in their job. Key opportunities lie in the area of feeling valued, empowering employees to improve service, and giving recognition. Serving with integrity and pride in the work for their agency were number 1, number 2 on the list. Our group believes that even though conducted survey creates some amount of discomfort, the city would benefit from tapping into the idea of employees who often just want to be heard. We polled Brentwood, Chattanooga, and the city of Las Vegas as 3 examples. The government survey concluded there is a major opportunity for improving employee engagement for cities willing to undertake an ongoing effort to measure communication and act on the results. We agreed and felt it important to communicate this with the City Council. At this time, let me introduce David G. Bowen.
Good evening, Vice Mayor Washington and council members. The development of the actual survey instrument is crucial. Unfortunately, there's an abundance of information available for review through external sources. Beyond the basic steps that had to be taken during the survey development process, a commitment to action after the survey results are received is of most importance. This will require a comprehensive plan that can be effectively communicated to all members of our organization throughout the entire survey process. Other considerations in the survey development process include determining the most effective questioning method, with the 2 most desirable methods being internet surveys or mail-in surveys. Additionally, if there are ways to group and scale results for immediate work groups versus an entire department, the ability of supervisors or managers to develop will be enhanced. When determining the type of survey to use, an internal or external survey will have to be considered. Internal surveys are beneficial due to the fact that they can be customized for our organization. However, external surveys are preferred by the Empower team due to the ability to utilize benchmarks established in other geographic areas. External surveys also allow for us to draw from the experience and expertise available from sources such as Gallup, the International City County Management Association, and the International Public Management Association. The 6 questions currently displayed on the monitor are examples taken from the Gallup Q12 survey, which is a 12-question survey designed to measure employee engagement. The questions were developed when researchers found that there were 12 key employee expectations that, when satisfied, form the foundation of strong feelings of engagement. Information obtained from the Q12 survey results is used to place individuals into one of 3 categories: engaged, not engaged, or actively disengaged. The Q12 survey is one of the products the city may want to consider for use. The city of Las Vegas has used this particular survey and has shared the results with our organization. If and when the determination has been made to conduct the employee survey, information will need to be communicated from the city administration describing the rollout procedure and the roles that the various departments will have in the survey process. The survey cycle will be introduced during this time period in order to provide an understanding to all employees as to what this survey process entails. If an external, neutral source is used to administer the survey, this should be communicated to employees in order to encourage participation, reinforcing the fact that their identities will not be disclosed. The development of the survey cycle will demonstrate a willingness by the city's administration to share results with all members of our organization. The development of the survey cycle will also ensure that information is thoroughly explained to managers who can then accurately communicate the results to other employees. Managers will also be tasked with developing action plans with the effectiveness of these plans measured by a subsequent survey. As previously stated, there must be a commitment to action to address concerns identified in the surveys. This will let employees know that we are committed to improving our organization, with their input being considered of great value. At this time, members of the Empower team are available to answer any questions that you may have.
Councilman?
I think the Deputy Chief, in closing up his presentation, really said it well, and that's we really do want to reach out to our employees, get a good snapshot about what they think and get their ideas and their input. That'll certainly start to paint a picture for us that we can begin to learn where we may need to spend some time to continue to improve, but most importantly, sending that message that what they think matters, and we think this will be a good step for us.
I think it's outstanding. Wonderful. Any other comments from council members before we move to item 22? All right, item 22, consider recommendations of the Assistant Fire Chief with regards to bids for the purchase of one heavy rescue truck and one medium rescue truck.
Good evening, Vice Mayor, Council, and City staff. I'm here to get bid approval for the capital improvement plan for one heavy rescue and one medium rescue. The background on this was funds were allocated in the capital improvement plan for one heavy rescue and one medium rescue. The heavy rescue will be used for our technical rescue operations such as structural, collapse, and confined space rescues. $1,200,000 was included in the 2012 capital improvement plan for the heavy rescue. The medium rescue will replace the oldest rescue vehicle in the department. $900,000 was included in the 2012 capital improvement plan for the medium rescue. The competitive purchasing process was followed for these items, and an invitation to bid was released to the public on March 31st, 2013. Bidders were allowed to submit bids on only one vehicle or on both vehicles individually. Bidders were also encouraged to submit a total price for both vehicles reflecting any discounts that would apply if the bidder were to be awarded the contract for both vehicles. The city reserved the right to make a contract award or awards on either a per item price or the total bid price. 5 vendors received bid requests. Sealed bids were opened on April 23rd. And you have the list there of all the ones and their prices. The low bid on both trucks was utility equipment services, but they did not meet the specifications that we put out. Southern Emergency Products then submitted the second lowest bid on the medium rescue, but they also did not meet specifications. Staff discussed these bid discrepancies with the legal department and agreed that the bid should be awarded to, both of them should go to Emergency Vehicles Incorporated. It is recommended that City Council approve the lowest bid that met all specifications for the purchase of one heavy and one medium rescue submitted by Emergency Vehicles Incorporated.
Thank you, Assistant Chief. You've heard the recommendation. Council members, what's your pleasure?
We've already agreed on this in the capital improvement plan, and not only do we want our employees to be happy employees, we want them to be well-equipped employees, so I'll move for passage.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye. Item 23, consider recommendations of the Chief of Police with regards to bids for renovation of the third floor of the main police building. Assistant Chief Moore, you're back.
Yes, sir. Vice Mayor Washington and council members, for your consideration is a request to renovate the third floor of the main police building. As you may recall, the third floor was used to house our criminal investigations division until they were relocated to their current facility on Rutherford Boulevard. One of our primary goals in utilizing the space previously occupied by the criminal investigations division was to create new interview and interrogation rooms. This will give department personnel the ability to conduct simultaneous interviews while enhancing the quality of recordings with improved soundproofing. The renovation will also create additional office space, which will allow us to relocate the entire operations division and the uniform division command staff to the third floor. The low bid of $67,580 from Mid-10 Constructors plus the estimated architect and engineering fee of $8,000 brought the total for this project to $75,580. After an engineering evaluation study was completed and changes from the original plan submitted to Mid-10 Constructors, the adjusted cost of the renovation was reduced to $42,231. When combined with the estimated architect and engineering fee of $8,000, the total cost for this project was reduced to $50,231. If approved, the funding for this project will come from the 2012-2013 Police Department budget, O&M of Buildings, line 28. The budget did not include the cost of this renovation project, which will create a overage in this line item at the end of the fiscal year. The overage will be funded from unencumbered funds in the overall police department budget. It is my request that the City Council approve the low bid from Mid-10 Constructors for the renovation of the third floor and the architect and engineering fee of $8,000 for a total cost of $50,231. With funding from the 2012-2013 Police Department budget, O&M of Buildings, line 28. At this time, I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, sir. Council members, do you have any questions of the Assistant Chief on this project?
Mr. Lyons, this is in need where we moved the detective division out to Rutherford Boulevard, and now it's allowing us to.
That's correct.
Chief,
yes, sir. We're now trying to utilize that space, and it's just going to require that we add a couple walls and do some soundproofing for the interview rooms.
I move for approval.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye. Item 24, consider for adoption Resolution 13-R-10, expression of official intent that certain expenditures to be incurred in connection with certain public works projects and related expenditures for a new elementary school on the west side of Murfreesboro and infrastructure related thereto, the reimbursement proceeds of notes, bonds, or other indebtedness to be issued or incurred by the city of Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Who's doing this one?
I'll take that, Mr. Vice Mayor. This is a fairly standard practice for us, is a refunding resolution for the construction of the school on the west side of Murfreesboro. Your CIP did include funding for the engineering and the site work, which will be in the form of infrastructure. But the city school system is working on a very fast time frame. Bids are coming in on that school project right now, and so we ask for your approval on this refunding resolution.
Thank you, City Manager. Council members, what's your pleasure on this resolution?
It's a growing city, and we can't build them fast enough. I move for approval.
Second. Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye.
Thank you.
Bill permits.
We have one.
We have a few.
We have one tonight. It has not finished its building codes inspections, but it has passed our other requirements. It's a restaurant at 179 Oak Fork Crossing, Mall Circle Drive. We have had beer at this location before, but this is an ownership change and a name change. We would like to issue the permit once they have passed all their codes requirements.
Move for approval.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye. Time to pay the statements.
Move that we pay the bills.
Second. Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
I don't see any Board of Commission appointments. Is there any business becoming? There is?
Yes. None of other business.
Yeah. Any other business?
Yes. On behalf of the Street Department, you have before you the 2013-2014 state maintenance contract. This is a contract we enter into each year. It is beneficial to us to get that reimbursement from the state for these purposes, and it is recommended that you adopt it.
Council members, it's a pleasure.
Move for approval.
Second. Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye. Any other business coming forward from staff of the city council? I appreciate y'all tolerating me tonight.
Oh, you did good.
With that said, we can adjourn.